Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and recently I have been inspired to do videos based on the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, Pluto moving into Aquarius, and now Uranus's move into Gemini, because these outer planets are creating a new landscape for the human experience. And because of that, I was further inspired to start a series about the children that have been born in these years. I've done one video on 2024, and I was further inspired to break it down more in 2025. So this video is focused on the babies that were born in June 2025. Right now it's May 2026. I'm not focusing in on the sun sign of Gemini or of Cancer, but rather what I'm going to talk about is the landscape with which these children will be born, because my intention for this video is to help you as a parent, a guide, a teacher, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, a coach, a neighbor, a friend of these children as they grow. I want you to be able to have tools to support their journey and their strength and their inner power, because they will come in with a louder, or I should say, a more attuned ear to their inner voice, to the soul within. They will understand that thoughts are things, and that as they focus on something, it becomes an experience in the material world, and they will start to craft their lives in a much different way. And then we add the technological advancements that we're experiencing, and the idea that it's now 2026, so the babies that were born in 2024 are 2 years old. By the time Pluto gets out of Aquarius in 20 years, they will be adults. So they will really walk into a workforce and an adulthood that we can't even truly imagine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the generational planets of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. I'm going to talk about, in some instances, the personal planets as they're interacting with the outer planets, the sun representing the I am and how I identify myself, the moon representing how I feel and how I emote, Mercury representing how I think and I communicate, Venus representing how I belong and how I partner, Mars representing how I take action. These are just very brief descriptions of the personal planets. Then we have the semi-personal planets of Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter represents expansion and possibilities, philosophies and theologies and religion and judicial systems, large opportunities to I almost think of a theologian or somebody who's well-traveled and very diverse. That's what we see Jupiter. We also see Saturn representing stability, representing structure, representing authority. And these planets will, they too affect your child on a personal level, but they also affect the environment around them. So we're going to talk about that. We are also going to talk about the nodes of the moon, which are considered karmic. The south node is something that we are familiar with on a soul level. It's a default in reaction, in belief, in thought. And it's also a point where we're excreting something that no longer serves us, an outdated operating system. The north node represents what we're stretching for, an experience that the soul is unfamiliar with, but yet wants to experience here in the material. The children born in 2025 have the south node in Virgo and the north node in Pisces. And just quickly, Virgo represents processes, systems, things that we assess, and how we become practical in the application of those systems. The North Node represents the soul. It represents our divinity, creativity here in Pisces, and represents an ability to connect to that soul's voice. So here they sit in opposition. as these children are born, because this is part of their life path. We also have the planet Chiron. It's not a planet, it's an asteroid, I'm sorry. Um, Chiron represents the chronic wound that we carry throughout a lifetime. Off the top of my head, I can't remember how many years it spends in a sign, but it will be in Aries for this period of time and has been. I think in 2026, we'll see it move into Taurus. This is significant because the children born specifically in 2024 and 2025 and early 2026 carry a wound of the self, a wound of who and what they are and how they assert themselves. The Aries energy is the very first sign of the zodiac, and it's where the soul makes its entry and discovers the I am. So let's open up the chart and go through some days that well, before I start, if for some reason you're inspired by this video, you want to like, subscribe, share, that's awesome. And if you would like to have your child's chart or your chart assessed, I am available and my information is below. So I'll say that now and then we'll jump in. Okay. All right. So here we see that we start. I'm going to keep this, I'm in the Pacific time zone. I'm going to keep this at 12 o'clock. The time of your child's birth and the time does matter. So, but for general purposes, that's what I'm going to do for these videos. The significance of this particular time as these children are born is really, for me, the conjunction between Neptune and Saturn. Neptune rules Pisces, and for the last 14 years, it has been traversing through this sign, and then it just entered Aries. In 2025, Neptune and Saturn flirt with each other. They kind of go cross over each other and they're hanging out. In early 2026, they become exact at 0 degrees of Aries. 0 degrees of Aries is the very, literally, it's like imagine coming through the birth canal. You're discovering, you are intending to experience a life, a creation is really more what I want to say. With Neptune here, Neptune rules imagination, it rules fantasy, it rules film and photography. It also rules a feeling of being invisible. And I think that's because it's so aware of its divinity within that we all are all part of one huge, beautiful, living, creating being. And like leaves on a tree, we get our own expression, but we're still all part of source. Here, what I believe with the North Node, 7 degrees away now, but it has been flirting with these two planets as well in transit. There is a wanting to create myself with a sense of my soul's history. Saturn rules history. So these children will come in very much aware of that dynamic within themselves. Now, for your personal, wherever you're, whatever day your child is born in June is not necessarily reflective that this aspect is happening here in the 7th and 8th house. The time of birth will flip the chart around and it will subtly change the landscape. So these nuances are important because where I'm going next is as Neptune and Saturn are reflecting a recreation of the self. We're also seeing Venus that rules I belong. She is in challenge in what they call detriment in Aries, and she's coming up against Chiron, that chronic wound. Well, she's on Chiron. They're 4 minutes apart, 3 minutes apart at this time, which means the children born in early June and late May are feeling an inherent wound of their value, of their skills, of potentially speaking their opinion freely. This wound has the opportunity to be transformed into wisdom, into a gift that they give not only to themselves, but to humanity, as Chiron is the great healer. But Chiron represents the feral part of the human experience as it is half man, half horse. So there's always a feeling of being sort of on the outskirts. And you couple that with the Aries energy and the master degree here of, the 20s, meaning the 20th 21st, 22nd, all the way up to the 29th degree. They're master degrees and they mean something in the child's chart. At this time, this is a master degree of potentially finding the wisdom in practicing my skills, my individuality, my differing ideas, but this might come later in life. And so in early life, this could present very much as unsureness, um, as feeling a little untethered, or where do I belong? There's one. Hold on, my little notes here. Here we go. I also wanted to comment that this transit here of Chiron and Venus in Aries is making a favorable aspect to Mars. I'm not going to count the moon because the moon moves very quickly, and we would really want to look at your specific child's chart to see if this was in play, because this would definitely mean something. But overall, this is a positive aspect to be brave in my self-expression through my soul's voice that speaks to me within. The 12th house is naturally Piscean and there's a lot of ability to transcend the material into the imagination, into the creativity, into where my passions lie, and being a leader within that. The 12th house doesn't necessarily represent leadership, but at this time, Mars is in Leo, and Leo very much represents leadership. So this is a really powerful dynamic for benefit and for ease. And again, I want to reiterate that right now, when we're looking at this chart, Leo is the 12th house, but Leo could be the second house, the fourth house. It really depends on the time of your child's birth and the location of their birth. So the wound overall is being supported by Mars being willing to take action, to follow my heart, to be courageous. And then the wound is now transformed into the gift that you give to others. And it is also supported by Jupiter in Gemini. Now, here we see the sun is in Gemini, Jupiter is in Gemini. This is favorable for your child in their birth chart. But I will say that Jupiter is considered in detriment, which means it's furthest away from its home. So one of the things about your child, we see Mercury here in Gemini, is your child may tend to vacillate between sort of overlooking details or moving a little bit too quickly through the written word, through learning, through communicating. With Mercury in the ruler of Gemini in the house, this is very, very favorable. But we have to be careful because Jupiter's expansion can have a tendency to overlook the path to get there. There's such visionaries at times that the road to get there can be delegated to others, when the potential could be that your child is meant to traverse that road themselves. I also wanted to go back real quickly to this Venus dynamic, because Venus is making what they call a quincunx to the South Node. So the thing about these children is they have a habit of being overly critical, potentially being super attached to making sure they're doing things right, making sure that they're there's a fine line in Virgo that it's the house of service, it's the house of our daily activities, it's the house of mental worry. So when you have a quincunx, it's kind of like having a blind spot. You can't really see it. You can feel the tension, but you don't really know where it's coming from. So here, this could also indicate that these children, there's also a half square to the sun at this time, that the wound is that they have great big ideas and they want to do things and they want to venture out, but then they're unsure of themselves and they go, and they get in their own way a little bit. We see that between June, let me move to June, between today and June 9th, Jupiter is in the last degrees of Gemini. So early born June babies have this dynamic of Jupiter at what they call an anaretic degree. It's a degree of tension. It's a degree that brings a sense of urgency to get it done. We also see that Uranus is at the anaretic degree of Taurus. This is again this sense of urgency, this sense of wanting to move into the future, wanting to express my uniqueness, my genius, and I want it to contribute to all. And when I say all, I mean when we're talking about little babies, they obviously don't know that, but there will be a sense of altruism, a sense of the collective, a sense of these children knowing that they are not that they are individual expressions of a bigger picture. We also see at these anoretic degrees of the 28 here that there's a sense of self-nurturing that gets to take place, a sense of being aware of the rules, the boundaries, the limitations of what has been, and yet being able to still continue to expand into the future. The closer you get to the 28, the last degrees of any sign or house, the more tension there is there, the more urgency there is to move into that next experience. So on the 10th of June, we see Jupiter move into what they call exaltation, where Jupiter is in a place of great dignity, where it feels welcomed home. This is where you would see a planet of parades and the hometown hero. You know, we won the Super Bowl, we won the oh my goodness, I can't think of the World Series. Children born, especially when you have a personal planet near Jupiter, it expands that planet. So this would be an interesting dynamic to have Jupiter and Mercury both in the sign of home and hearth and of nurturing and of patriotism and of property. So there could be great benefit with this dynamic. Now, at the same time, there is this square that is to Saturn and Neptune. You can see they've moved a wee bit, but they haven't come into an exact conjunction. This is a little bit of a push-pull where my imagination, my history, even potentially my feelings of not being important enough or not being visible enough, or even being so aware of the monumental challenges of this Earth experience can really get in the way. A square is what I think is a combination of an outer experience creating tension within me. And so here, this could be really having to individualize myself almost in opposite way than how I'm raised. There could be the potential that the way that your home environment is, and again, there's going to be another layer depending upon where Cancer is. Here we see it's in the 10th house, so this would have something to do with career if you're a Virgo rising. But, you know, if you're a Libra rising or a Scorpio rising or an Aquarius rising, it's going to put this in a different house. So it'll have another element. But in general, we're going to see that there is going to be a way of thinking, potentially even a religious home or a home that has very definitive beliefs, and this could be contrary to the evolving beliefs of the child. We do see this aspect being supported by Mars and Mars's individuality and its willingness to be brave in its self-expression and following its heart. Now, here we do see Mars is entering those anaretic degrees. I think, again, the higher the number here, 26, 27, 28, 29, the tension is growing. And here, this would be really wanting to take action on who and what I am. And being guided by a parent who understands their child is evolving into a hybrid of a human used to a certain limiting structure and a soul that's experiencing that human structure, but is much more expansive beyond it because their thoughts are things. And when they harness their mind in a direction that focuses in on their desires versus their challenges, magic can happen. And so that could be part of the tension. So as a parent or as someone who is the shepherd of these children, you could really help walk them through that time. Um, Mars at this point is also in a very favorable aspect to Chiron. Um, this is Mars's natural house is Aries, so this is a natural conversation to me. This is a willingness to be brave about expressing my individuality and understanding that that individuality is a contribution rather than something that keeps me isolated or potentially feeling outside. We do see a square to Uranus because there could be really Mars has no patience, and neither does Uranus, frankly. It looks to the future, but it immediately wants to detonate the old structures. Um, and Mars is very much like that. So there could be a little bit of tension going on there in your child's chart. And depending again where the houses are, this to me at this time is an unsureness of whether or not I'll be able to truly move into the new territories, into the diversity that I want, because the ninth house rules that expansion. And here at this time, Mars is in the 12th house, which rules invisibility. And so there could be that relates right now, but it is again supported by Jupiter that is just entering its exaltation at this very powerful 0 degree of creation and of a certain amount of protection. The 0 degree is where I really get to have a boundary around the things I want and only allow the things that support that to permeate that boundary. And this is not about being, a yes person to someone or always saying that everything is, oh, yes, you're a magical creature. Just think about this and it's not about feeding something without authenticity. It's about understanding the evolution of the human experience. And so they're very much the Jupiter at a 0 degree could be about protecting the traditions while allowing for the expansion, protecting the traditions of the home, the hearth, the beauty of religious ceremony and of high holidays to embrace bigger concepts, but not at the same time limiting the children to those concepts. Um, Venus has now entered her rulership, which means that she is the governess of this home. Now she's making a square to Pluto here. And when Venus is in Taurus, she's a little bit more materially minded. She thinks about her belongings. She thinks about her monetary resources. She thinks about her comfort. She really enjoys things of the earth, creating things with things of the earth, flowers and beautiful food. And um, we see jewelry here. We see a lot of adornments for the physical apparatus. The square to Pluto here would be challenging your child to ask her or him, why are you doing that? Are you doing it because it pleases other people? Are you doing it because you're afraid you'll be poor? Are you doing it for the love of it? Um, this Pluto is the great psychologist, the Freud of the zodiac, where it ferrets down deep into your psychological makeup and like spotlights where there's been decisions or choices made that aren't really about an authenticity of the self, but rather the power and the control that could potentially be either perpetrated on you or that you could perpetrate on others. So this is an inner tension of, I think it's an inner tension of what is my true platform of why I'm building what I'm building. And we see that supported by Mercury, but these planets are going to move very quickly. And this is specific to this particular day. Although the period of time when they're in square is from the 8th to the 11th. So there's that. Okay, now let's go to the 17th. Now, by the 17th, we're getting the sun at those late degrees of Gemini. When the sun is at the late degrees of Gemini, you're going to see somebody who's ravenous to express themselves, to They'll be very curious. They'll be very um, focused in on potentially on communications, technology, and how it relates to how they identify themselves. I mean, I almost think of like the journalist. Right now in May of 2026, we're seeing this breakdown of traditional news. Some people have left their jobs as anchors on big networks and opened podcasts and are finding great success in that direction, which I think is indicative of the technology advancements we'll see in the future. And here, with Jupiter being very close to the sun, we are seeing two powerhouses come together. And there's an urgency for the sun to feel itself, to feel its identity. And that gets even more ravenous as it gets closer and closer to Jupiter. This could also indicate a person who's extremely religious, extremely attached to their home, their environment, their neighborhood as a leader within their community. Um, while we still see that Jupiter, I mean, we still see a square to Jupiter and Saturn, we see a direct exact square to Saturn at this point with Jupiter. And this could be a redefining of how the home works or how leadership is expressed for my home community. So this would be representing the potentials. It would almost be like, how can I describe this? You know, when I was growing up, I'm 66 years old, there's telephone poles. Now they're starting to move those wires underground and the telephone poles are going to be removed. That's kind of what's happening here. Something, an old structure is being removed that has to do with the self, the individual, how I identify myself, my personality, because it's squaring the sun and it's squaring Jupiter. So it could be a redefining of old beliefs about the self, even places where I stepped out of the spotlight or I didn't walk into the spotlight. But we also see this being supported by Mars over here in the beginning of Virgo, where emotion has come out of the picture and we're going to start to really uh, put in. Mars takes action. In Virgo, Mars takes practical action. And the sextile that's being supported to Jupiter here for the next few days, or the last few days, I should say, and the next few days, is being able to see my expansion, seeing the possibilities and moving forward in that way. Jupiter and the sun will be conjunct for the rest of the month. So until June 30th, and it will be exact at 3 degrees on the 24th. Let me jump to the 24th. So all the children born during that period, that week, will feel this conjunction and feel this and have these potentials of really connecting and sort of when I say connecting, I mean connecting to traditions, to home, to hearth, to property, to land. They could be people who are invested in making the earth a better place, you know, and on some level sacrificing themselves in order to do that, and the tension that that can pull. And that sacrifice is not sacrificing your life; it's just the time, the energy, and how they're dedicating themselves to something. It could also bring on, honestly, it could make you a star, make you very popular. Uh, in 2026, Taylor Swift is one of the most, she is the most famous pop star in the world. I don't know why I was going to say might. She has Jupiter and Cancer in her chart. And being this close to the sun, wow, there's something very powerful about that. But again, on some level, this has to be tamed because you could also have somebody who becomes a supreme ruler as well. Um, there could be a little Mr. Know-it-all or Miss Know-it-all in this. And I find it interesting that we have the quincunx exact Pluto here because Pluto is going to ferret out the real platform with which you're asserting yourself. Pluto is a very powerful little planet. They wanted to dwarf Pluto, but Pluto shan't be dwarfed. Pluto represents that darkness within that needs to express itself so that the light can be seen. We also have at this time, let me click off of Jupiter, Uranus is at that 29th degree of Taurus. This is probably the most stressful of the degrees because there is this double down on recognizing where I've been overly stubborn and haven't allowed myself to move forward. And I think when I look at the 29, it reduces down to an 11, which is the master number of thought. I think this is super powerful because that is what's going on with these kids. They are going to come in with a soul's knowing that will traverse the old ways of learning and the new ways of learning. And within that, they're going to carve their own path, or they're going to have to carve their own path. And I want to offer this too because those children that are born now, they're cancers. We see the sun has moved into Cancer. Having Mars in Virgo is rather helpful for the Cancer energy because, first of all, it sextiles it. So it's a cooperative aspect. It does require an activation, a knowing. So daily practices, I think, will be, or I say daily because Virgo rules daily activities, but daily practices of how brave am I willing to be to follow my true north and what I know at an intuitive level. Jupiter rules the connection to the angelic realm because it co-rules Pisces. And in Sagittarius, it rules traveling to new worlds and new lands. So Jupiter has a lot of intuitive energy attached to it, a lot of inner knowing, a lot of wisdom, a lot of the shaman. And in the sign of Cancer, in water, that is just amplified because of the exaltation in Cancer. So this little configuration could be challenging in its quincunx to Pluto because anytime this child tries to be a muggle or tries to hunker into human insecurity or potential lower energies that thwart its expansion, there'll be something not unpleasant, but there'll be something nagging and it's an interior struggle. It's not necessarily an outside struggle. So as a parent, when you can see that your child walking through this, you just give them permission to explore because Jupiter is an amazing explorer, and so is Mercury. Um, let's go to the last day of the month. These are, again, our Cancer babies. And at the end of the month, we see Venus in a conjunction to Uranus. Uranus is the great awakener, or the libertarian, the visionary for the future, the genius. We see Venus here in her rulership. So there is the potential here for these children to be very popular on the internet or with technology, futuristic focused technologies that provide them resources, and they could inadvertently experiencing these things. You know how I don't know when this video will be viewed by people. I mean, it could be 10 years from now, it could be 10 minutes from now, but things go viral. And when something goes viral, it just blows up and you don't know why. That could very much be how these children are, where what they create brings great potentials for their future. I think that's also coupled with the conjunction to Jupiter and the Sun. So that's going to be an interesting thing. And I want to offer this too, because this would also be a child who would do unexpected things that would potentially work out very well in their favor. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the pool noodle. It's basically a piece of styrofoam, okay? It's probably 4 inches wide and 6 feet long. And some guy in, I don't know, the 80s invented this piece of styrofoam. And I'm pretty sure that everyone around him was like, are you kidding me? That's what? It's a piece of styrofoam. No one's going to lay on that in the pool. And he's made millions on it. So that's exactly what could happen here, where through their imagination, sudden lightning strikes, they use their skills and things happen overnight, or they happen at a very young age or in an unexpected way. I'm going to stop the share right now. So again, these children being born in 2025 have a strong highway of magic inside of them. And I believe that that magic will, as they age, and as they grow will become more visible to the outside eye. And they have chosen you to be their guardian, their shepherd in these early years. And the more information you have about their natal chart, which is their soul's intention for this lifetime, the more influence and the more benefit the whole family gains from this awareness and this contract, because that's what it is. We all, on some level, contract to experience things that allow our soul an opportunity for choice, a choice to come from love and expansion or fear and contraction. So I hope you found this helpful. If you'd like to get your child's chart done or you'd like to get your chart done, my information is below in the description. Please subscribe, and please share. And congratulations on your June baby. Bye-bye.